So this is the shop. This is the future home of the man cave. The studio. Probably gonna put a suite in here, a guest suite in here too, I think. And it's a pretty big open area. I think it's 45 by 45 or something floor space, and the ceiling looks to be about 8, 16, 17 feet high. Pretty echoey in here. And the light bulbs and ballasts that are in the shop give it a bit of a hum. Hopefully that doesn't affect the audio here too much. And what is behind me is, many people are going, oh my God, he's a trophy hunter. I hate trophy hunting. And for all you people that react emotionally like that, all you're doing is showing me and the rest of the world of your lack of knowledge and lack of inquiring on knowledge before you emotionally lash out. And what everything behind me is, everything behind me represents a lifetime of insane experiences, thousands and thousands of miles traveled, hiked, sweat, and a lot of food put in the freezer, and a lot of people fed with very healthy table fare that was meant for us to be to have as nourishment throughout our lifetime, right? This is a product from the real world. And what else is behind me is, not only does all of the items behind me represent numerous incredible memories, but it's also the inedible parts of the table fare, which I never wasted. I never wasted anything. So everything behind me is what couldn't be ate, all right? But it was saved. It was also saved to also be somewhat what you might call a real live photo album. Not real live, but a photo album in a way. Every single item behind me has a story, and nothing was wasted. The polar bear on my left here, if you can see the screen, there's a story behind that. I have the photograph of the fresh harvest, the name of the Inuit hunter who harvested that polar bear, and as well I have the legal documents, the license, the tags, his name, and it was harvested in Greenland by an Inuit hunter. And along my travels I came across that item. It passed through various hands, and I ended up with it. And actually, it turns out I know the family, the taxidermist who did the work to create that item, and I ended up with it. I purchased it. And other than that, I didn't harvest the polar bear myself. It was a rare item. But there's a story behind it, and it was harvested by a native Inuit hunter in Greenland, and nothing was wasted again. And that's just the part that isn't edible, but it was saved. Okay? And there you go. I can save this discussion for another time, but you can have a look behind me at all sorts of items behind me and just know that nothing was wasted, and every single item behind me fed a lot of people over the years and kept them very healthy. Okay? And I continue to do that today. And don't forget, if it wasn't for hunting, conservation wouldn't even exist right now for wildlife. It wouldn't. Anyway, it's a whole other topic. We talk about it another time. But I got some more shares I want to get shared here while I have a little bit more time left this morning. And then I got to get my butt working. Bear hunt ruined. First of all, thank you so much, as through you, I now know what happened. My name is Wallace Jeffrey, and I've been an outdoor guy all my life, although slowing down now at age 74. In mid-October 2011, I was hunting public land for elk and bear near Pagosa Springs, Colorado. I tagged a nice bull early and then focused on black bear. Things got strange quickly. On my way home to where I wanted to hunt, there was an old elk carcass from an earlier season. It was gone. Then there were no birds on my day 2 old elk. There should have been birds, but there were none. I set up on a finger ridge overlooking a spring. As soon as I settled in, I started hearing a very loud banging noise only 40, 50 yards down the same ridge I was hunting. This was like hitting a baseball bat against a tree, but much louder. At first I thought it could be elk fighting, but quickly dismissed that as there were no other noises, just the banging. Becoming uncomfortable as the bang continued without an explanation, I gave up my hunt and left for the truck. I had no idea who or what ran me out of my spot until 10 years later. I read your book and watched your channel. Thanks to you, I now know that I heard was a Sabe/Sasquatch that just wanted me to leave. I really appreciate what you're doing, so please don't stop. P.S. There were people that I thought were friends that did not believe me. All right, man. Wallace, thanks for sending that share in. And yeah, it's good that you're up to speed with what exactly was you more than likely had a bump in with there. And yeah, the unfortunate part about it was speaking truth. The real shitty deal about speaking truth today, no matter what the topic is the ridicule. Isn't it amazing how, I was talking about that the other day with Sarah. I was pointing out just how alarming it is in a way that the so-called modern society today, on average, people are so willing to pull the trigger on their neighbor in an aggressive way without thinking rationally first. Everybody's being conditioned to just attack, and discredit. It's really kind of sad, isn't it? But I guess, when it comes to speaking the truth, that's one way of finding out who your real friends are, or possibly finding out who your real intelligent friends are, right? Anyway, thanks for making that share, man. It's important to me that another fellow outdoors person shared that openly and realizes what's going on and is picking up knowledge from what we're doing here. That's really, really good. Dear Steve, I sent this back in March 29. I know you have a ton of emails you get, but I wanted to be sure you had a chance to read this. Also, if you did read this on your YouTube channel, I must have missed the episode, even though I try to watch every day. I also added a few more details that I previously left out and added a question about Mike from the Sasquatch Ontario channel. I have great respect and admiration for you. Steve, I pray for you every day. Keep up the awesome work, and I have no doubts that you will be there when the truth finally comes to light. All right, thanks for those kind words. I wanted to write to share my story with you for some time. A while back, I posted my experience in the comments section, but I also wanted to reach out to share my respect and appreciation for who you are and what you're doing. I'm 42 years old and a principal of a small school in Dutchess County, New York. Though we're about an hour and 30-minute drive from New York City, we're literally a world away from the city in every way possible. For your information and for the purposes of transparency and clarity, I've been following you and your channel for almost 2 years now. You, Dave, Scott, and a choice few others are really doing this right. I know most people share their admiration for you, but it's for absolutely good reason. We need more men of integrity who are willing to share truth, fight for disclosure, and be open to all voices. From that end, nobody out here is doing it better than you. Holy cow, that's a handful of supportive words. Thanks for that. I married 4 sons, and when they aren't tearing the house apart, we enjoy spending time outside. 4 sons. Oh my God. How's that grocery bill doing? Most we are doing your typical sports like baseball or football, but they've all taken interest in wildlife and the outdoors as well. There's nothing better than spending time in nature with your family. With that said, I'm not a big game hunter, but we have some of the best grouse and pheasant hunting in the world out here, and I'm a mean skeet/trap shooter. Anyway, my wife and boys have all gravitated towards these things, so it's become a family affair. Good for you, that's good to hear. 2 years ago, my wife got me a trail cam for Christmas, and we have placed it about 200 yards behind our house. We live on a 6-acre wooden lot, and we're abutted up against a state preserve with more than 300 acres. We've captured typical animals that are known to inhabit this part of the country, and we have even captured some of the more elusive ones, like porcupines and bobcats. In the spring of 2020, I went out to check the camera. My boys and I have been placing food under a tree to feed the animals, with the trail camera angled to capture whatever furry critters came along. The strange thing was happening, however, over the course of several food drops. When I would go check the camera, the food would be gone, but 2 things were off. First, there were never any footprints or indication of which animal may have taken the food. And secondly, the camera, which would have been on a 10-second video run, wasn't capturing the animal or animals that might be taking the food. It was even odder about this. What was even odder about this? It was almost looked like the area under the pine trees had been groomed, like there was never any food left there at all. Not one crumb or trace of food was ever present. I also noticed that there were orbs of light that would be captured from time to time as well on the camera, and almost always at night. I've never seen them around anywhere else, but sure enough, these orbs are showing up on film, and they would be captured both before and after the food was taken. Well, that's a little different. Fast forward to midsummer 2020, and I was taking our 2 dogs out for a run. I figured I'd go and check the camera, and as I walked in that direction, the dogs suddenly stopped. Now, because where we live, I don't leash them. They run all over, but we're trained extremely well, and when I whistle or tell them to come, they do. They'd been with me to this area a bunch of times before, but on this day, they acted very strange. One sat down for a bit and looked with ears up deeper into the woods, and the other, I specifically remember, was making light squealing noises, almost as if she was trying to say something to me. A little odd to say it that way, but that's what she was doing. And I'm a firm believer that all animals, especially those closest to man, like dogs and horses, have a spirit. Calling them to keep up with me a second time and third time, they paced laterally back and forth about 4 or 5 times from my forward position, and then, without warning, they took off back to the house, and in a hurry. I thought this was so odd, and something struck me at that point that made me feel there must be someone or something that spooked them. Both of the dogs were young at this time. One was just over a year, and the other was 8 or 9 months, and they have endless energy. One is a lab mix, and the other is a Staffordshire Terrier mix, and they like to run and be outside, so having them retreat, which is what it felt like, back to the house really sent me into a defensive mindset. After a few seconds watching to make sure they went to the house, I turned to continue my walk to the trail cam with my guard up. When I got about 5 or 6 feet from the tree with the camera, where the camera is, I had this overwhelming feeling of dread come over me in an instant. At that same exact moment, everything went dead silent in the woods. There was a nice breeze, birds were chirping, and a few squirrels and chipmunks that were just running all over were, in a snap second, gone. Just this eerie silence. I immediately had this feeling as if something had happened, but nothing did. I couldn't move. I was telling myself not to move, and my mind was racing in 100 places. But to be transparent, even though I've been interested in Sasquatch all my life, and I teased my boys that we're going to capture one on the trail cam, I didn't once think that at that moment of these creatures. Truthfully, though, I didn't hear voices in my head. Something was telling my body to be still and not move. Not sure if that makes sense, but that was the experience I was having at the moment. I managed to unfreeze myself after a minute or so and slowly approach the camera, even though, truthfully, part of me was saying to retreat back to the dogs. When I got about a step away, I heard something down the path about 50 to 100 feet away. It wasn't a loud noise, but it sounded like a basic ruffling of leaves, but I jerked my head to the area as everything was still completely quiet. Sure enough, about 100 feet away, I saw what looked like a large, upright back standing near a cluster of trees. I moved slightly to my left to try and get a better view through the group of poplar trees down in that area of the trail, and what I was seeing moved to its right. On the right, there was a larger group of red oak and maple trees beyond the figure I was seeing. Those trees were further down the path, so I should have been able to see whatever this was, but nothing. In rethinking what happened next, before the image was gone, I did notice more noise that would indicate movement, like someone or something had taken some steps. Adjusting myself again, I stepped forward beyond the trail cam, and when I moved more to my left to see what was shifting to its right, the figure disappeared. Again, I froze, and I immediately thought there was no way I just saw what I saw. I was telling myself I was worked up because the dogs were off and ran away, and then the woods and all the animals in the woods went silent. Then I said to myself it was just pareidolia, and I didn't smell anything awful or anything else that folks have described during these encounters. But what on earth could be that size and just disappear? I went down the path a few days later with my boys with a tape measure, and from what I could tell, this being stood between 6'8" and 7.5 feet. I filled this incident as hyper-imagination and watching too many Sasquatch videos on YouTube or Amazon Prime. After all, I'm in a suburban area not far from the city. Poughkeepsie. And even though I'm in some acreage and there's a preserve there, if there were a Bigfoot or group of Sasquatches, how could they travel to this location and not be seen? The answer to that question came to me a good 5 or 6 weeks later. My brother sent me a link to an article about a local sighting of a Sasquatch. I've included it for you to look at if you choose to check it out. The article was a report of a Bigfoot sighting in the town just to the north of my house. The exact location of the sighting was less than 3 miles as the crow flies. It was at that moment that I realized I saw what I thought I saw, and I've joined a club of folks who know these beings exist. It was and still is a surreal feeling, but nevertheless, there it is. After I read the article, I immediately recalled that there have been many dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, of reports of sightings that involved orbs or other light forms or other forms of lights. It all made sense to me at that point. Steve, I believe these are interdimensional beings, and after watching Scott Carpenter's latest video on a possible vortex, I'm more convinced than ever that these beings are from another dimension. They are able to travel anywhere there is a vortex or slip in the dimensional spectrum. Finally, I want to also share with you that I'm a Christian, and I was going to respond to your question about why things aren't getting better. But Scott Carpenter did a great job in a video addressing the same question. I share that because these beings very well could be what the Bible describes as giants, or they could also be demonic entities. Either way, they are real. We need to focus more on getting that truth out than debating footprints or flesh and blood versus an undiscovered species, etc. I'd love to meet you someday. Maybe I'll bring my family out to BC for a trip, and please take this to the bank, if you're ever in this area, I'd be happy to let you bunk up with my little circus in my house and get you to the world's best bird hunting locations. I love and respect to you. May the Lord protect you in all you do, and I truly look forward to continuing to watch your platform and mission grow. Sincerely, Matt Pascal. If you get this email and decide to share it with this community, feel free to use my name. All right, man. Matt, I absolutely appreciate that email that you shared with all of us through me. Appreciate the encouraging words and the supportive words as well. Really, really appreciate that. And the people that are arguing amongst each other and trying to suppress experiences like yours, like there's many people out there who have held the narrative, so to speak. They've held the camera attention when it comes to this topic, and they've collected reports for many years now, and they've actually withheld reports and changed the wording in the reports to deny the public from the true experience these people had. How nasty is that? Is that not nasty as shit? And as far as I'm concerned, once you've done that more than once, even once, you're done. Your credibility is shot out the door. You're about as trustworthy as a dirty little rat in the chicken coop stealing egg, whatever. As far as I'm concerned, once you've done that, your credibility is shot out the door. You need to be kicked to the curb with the rest of the garbage. I mean, how dare does any human being take the story shared from somebody finally thinking they're in a safe place and either shun them, change their story, or belittle them and tell them they're crazy because they shared what they didn't want to hear? How nasty is that? But anyway, yeah, there's way more than enough evidence to prove to the people, to show the people that these orbs, these lights, these beings are connected 100%. Obviously, from the thousands of reports similar that people shared, these orbs are possibly these beings traveling and showing up. That's all there is to it. And it might sound a little crazy to some, but after you hear it thousands of times from people around the world that aren't connected, you better start paying attention. Right? If you don't, you're not that swift. Right? You got to listen to the people. All right, moving along. Here we go. Steve, enjoy the platform you provide to individuals who have had an encounter with Bigfoot. You lend credibility and truth to subject while showing no prejudice to others who come forward with their own experiences. You also seem like a stand-up guy who respects nature, Native Americans, and people's freedoms. Keep doing what you do. Again, thank you very, very much for those kind words. This happened in October 2004 while elk hunting the White River National Forest in northwest Colorado. This area contains the largest migrating elk herd in North America. I'm not a resident of Colorado, but traveled to hunt elk first in 2003. The outfitter refused to put me in a spike camp in the upper elevations, so instead I camped at the trailhead. So I got up before dawn and hiked up the mountain looking for the elk herd. It was just too much, so I figured when I come back to hunt in 2004, I would make my own camp high up to get closer to the elk herd, weather permitting. In 2004, I came back ready to hunt. I did an internet search and found an area of dark timber and open meadows and planned on hunting there. I hiked up the same trailhead as I did the year prior along the Ute Creek. The weather was warm and there was no snow in the high country yet. I hiked a good day back before setting up my camp, and I didn't see a soul the whole time. I packed light and was armed with a 300 Win Mag rifle. I had good optics and my GPS marked my route. As long as I kept the creek in my sight, I had an easy reference point back out, so I wasn't worried about getting lost. I also carried a satellite phone since I was alone. I wasn't taking any chances. The next day was warm and sunny day, and I set out to locate this large meadow I'd seen on the internet map. I found it and entered above the northwest corner of the meadow. The tree line ended and slowly descended down into the open meadow. There were a few sparse trees and rock outcroppings as you left the tree line. I gauged the wind and it favored me, but as I descended lower, I could see that it swirled and at times was at my back. My game plan was to set up higher, possibly behind some rocks or trees, and hopefully the elk would come down the meadow towards me. I felt confident in making a shot at 250 yards. The 300 Win Mag is an accurate gun, that's why I carried one. I made my way back to camp and entered my way marks on my GPS so I could wake up early and get to the meadow before sunrise. I didn't make a fire, but had a small cooking burner and ate some hot soup and was asleep very quickly. I woke up the next morning and was off to my spot. I arrived about 20 minutes before sunrise, and it was very still with a slight breeze that I could tell was at my face. I set up on top of some big rocks and used that as my bench rest. As the sun came out, I could make out the shapes of elk in the middle of the meadow about 500 to 600 yards away from me. The herd was mostly cows that I could see and numbered at least 100. Holy! I didn't count, but the herd was a good size. I slowly got my gear ready just in case the herd got closer. I laid my rifle down alongside me. It was amazing to observe elk in the wild. As I scanned the herd, I noticed how tight together they were. Then something occurred to me. This herd wasn't grazing, but they all seemed to be staring at one of the two large cows. The whole herd would shift its position as if on command from the lead cow elk. I scanned the edge around the meadow to see if I could locate any blaze orange. Could it be other hunters? I thought. I didn't see anything. But maybe they were well hidden too, but the wind wasn't in their favor. Then I thought black bear or even a mountain lion may be stalking the herd. I was a good 100 to 200 yards away from any cover to the edge of the elk herd, so whatever got the attention of the lead cow maybe was using the tree line as cover. I felt like I was in the middle of a really cool nature video and watching intently to see what was happening. The lead cow would make small position changes, and the whole herd would move in unison, but staying mostly in the middle of the meadow. Every time the herd moved to stop, the lead cow would stop and turn towards whatever she detected in the tree line. Then I thought maybe some big bulls were following the herd, but the rut was over. I kept glassing the whole time, looking for any sign of what was about to happen. By this time, the sun had risen, and while there was still a nice chill in the air, it was warming up. I wondered how long this herd would stay in the open. After about 30 minutes, something to my left caught my attention. About 200 yards away, I saw through my binoculars two very large, dark shapes crawl out of the tree line towards a patch of 3 tall evergreen trees in front of me. What amazed me was the speed at which these two shapes moved. They covered the open ground and stopped the trees as if they were crawling like army soldiers. They didn't seem to run on 2 legs or even 4 legs. They crawled with such efficiency and speed that it's hard to decipher what they could have been. They definitely weren't black bear, as the size was too big. And do black bears hunt together? They didn't notice me, as I still had the wind in my face. I had a good cover and I didn't move. I had on camo except for my blaze orange vest, and I had taken my orange hat off and I put on a warmer black stocking cap. I was in an elevated position, and this allowed me to watch their every move. I observed these two things lift their heads up from a flat-laying position in the grass and peek towards the herd of elk. I got momentary glimpses of them as they did this. My mind couldn't process what I was seeing. What were they? I kept thinking to myself. I shifted my binoculars towards the elk herd, which was still making small position changes while concentrating on something on the opposite side of the meadow from me. Whatever was there, I couldn't see it. After an hour no movement, the elk herd started to spread out a little. An hour, holy cow. With the exception of the lead cow, she stood and watched the tree line. She would dip her head and wag her tail. Her ears were up, and the whole time keeping on alert. Whatever I saw earlier, I think, was still over by the three trees laying low, but I didn't see them. I wanted to bring my rifle up and try to zoom in on the scope, but I feared moving. Just as I thought about finally doing so, I heard a couple of chirps like birds make. Then I heard another chirping sound from the area where I saw these two things. That made one of these things get up and move parallel to the herd of elk. Once again, this thing moved with such great speed and efficiency. It didn't crawl, but this time ran in a squatted position. It took up position about 100 yards away from the other one, and I lost sight of it. It was now above the elk herd, while the other one was below it. I then started to figure out that whatever was on the other side of the meadow was trying to drive the herd towards my side. Again, I heard what sounded like birds chirping, and I waited some sort of movement. I figured that the next movement I detected, I would grab my rifle, which was behind me. My heart was pounding so hard, I'm surprised I didn't hear it. I wasn't afraid of what I saw, but I was afraid of being detected. I just couldn't process what I was witnessing, and I thought because of my inexperience hunting in the West, I didn't know what I was seeing. I shifted my focus towards the herd, which was still slowly moving around. Again, more chirping sounds came from across the meadow from me. This caused the lead cow to elk to switch her position to the opposite side of the herd that she was on. Just then I saw a lot of the elk look over to the side of the meadow, and they all took off running first towards the side of the meadow I was on, and then, as if directed by the lead cow, they took off straight up the meadow away from me. The whole time they didn't get close to the edge of the meadow. I quickly reached down, grabbed my rifle, shouldered it, and scanned the area for movement from the two that I saw. Again, I heard the chirping sounds. The one closest to me slowly rose up, using the trees as cover. It was on 2 feet, bent over at the waist, peeking out between the tree branches. I had my rifle scope on this thing and increased the power, and I could definitely see it was no bear. It was no man. It was at least 8 to 9 feet tall, and it had to weigh 800 pounds. His shoulders were back were wide and covered with matted hair. I would describe it as a buffalo standing on 2 feet minus the horns. It was black in color with a large head. Compared to the other one, it appeared to be larger in size. It never turned towards me as it was fixated on the elk. I scanned up and down, looking at this thing through my rifle scope. The longer I looked, the calmer I became. I even thought how calm I was if I wanted to shoot this thing. I'd have no problem holding my rifle steady. Plus, I was laying on rocks with my pack as a rest for my rifle. But then I thought I was using 225 grain bullets. Would that be enough to stop this thing? Regardless, there was no way I would have ever taken a shot, and I'm proud to say that. My next thought was to try and get my camera, which is in my pack. I switched my attention to see what the elk herd was doing. They had stopped, and they were again in a tight bunch. They all were looking at the edge of the meadow opposite me. They started to slowly move towards me, and then the lead elk turned them in a big J pattern. I rotated back and forth, watching the elk move and the Bigfoot ahead of me. He was as still as a statue. I watched him for quite a while. The elk kept making the same J pattern. They would stop and then all together trot about 30 to 50 yards and then turn and curl in or out like the letter J. Ever so often I would hear the chirping sounds, but well, nothing other than the elk were making their same movements. It's like they were deceiving the Bigfoot who were trying to pattern their movements. Whatever they were doing, it seemed to work. These elk had no desire to enter the woods, but they didn't leave the meadow. What if they got closer to me for a shot, I thought? Would I expose my position to them? And if I did, and how would they react? I've heard about grizzly bears coming to the sound of gunshots. Would these things do the same? It was now going on 11 a.m. in the morning. Holy, that's late. It was still chilly, maybe in the 40s. I figured the elk would have wanted to move into the dark timber, but they stayed in the middle of the meadow. The Bigfoot ahead of me had lowered himself back down, as was now laying alongside the clump of trees. I started to feel a small chill in the back of my neck and was thinking the wind was changing slightly. You could see clouds off in the distance, and the weather had called for snow. This whole time I never thought about food, water, or even to take a piss. I was so locked in on what I was seeing, and time seemed to fly by. I still wanted to get my camera, but didn't want to risk moving. Finally, I slowly set my rifle down next to me and slid my pack out. Just then, I heard the whistling, but this time in rapid succession and from more than one position. I think I was busted. I froze and saw the Bigfoot ahead of me get up and turn, heading towards the tree line. It never turned in my direction. Once again, it moved without sound and incredibly fast, as if it were floating on air. I cannot emphasize enough the speed at which these things moved. Then it was gone into the timber. I got my camera out, and never again did I see one. I also noticed after about 15 minutes the elk were in more of a relaxed state. Some were laying down, others grazing. The lead cow would occasionally look around, but even she seemed more relaxed. They eventually came down towards me, heading to the creek to drink. They moved very quickly and were out of sight as they followed the creek down. It was now about 2 p.m., and I slowly got down from the rocks and sat there trying to gather my thoughts. I was physically and mentally exhausted. I fell asleep for about 30 minutes, but awoke and felt fear as I thought, how am I going to get back to my tent? I had to walk through the timber. Would these things be waiting for me? I finally got up and glassed the whole area, looking for any signs of what I saw. I made it very slowly back to my tent. I gathered my things up and moved my camp down alongside the creek. I made a small fire and ate, staying on alert. During the night, it started snowing, but I didn't get that cold. The next day, it got into the 70s, melting the snow. It made for a muddy mess. With the warmer weather, I figured the elk would stay up in the high country, as I found no sign of them. I eventually made it back to the trailhead. I called a man who I arranged to pack my elk out if I got one. He grew up in this area and was very knowledgeable of the high country. I asked him jokingly, "What's the strangest thing you ever seen in the woods?" And he laughed and said that he's heard stories but never saw anything. I told him what I saw and he believed me. He asked if I sure it wasn't a bear, and I wished I would have called him right away. He asked if I was sure it wasn't a bear, and wished I would have called him right away. I told him I had this thing in my sights and I know what I saw. I was hesitant to tell anyone else's story, not even my wife. I eventually told my son, and he has always encouraged me to talk to others about it, but with my job, I didn't think I should. I've gone back and hunted that area in Colorado during the archery season with a guide. During our hunt during the rut, I heard the bird chirping sounds, and although it was probably birds, this time you never know. I asked my guide about Bigfoot, and he said he's heard stories too, but nothing sighted around here. We talked about the vastness of the forest and the availability of food to survive, but these things did exist, and how easy it would be for them to do so. Excuse me. Not too many people have gone into this area. I'm interested in hearing your opinion. Your experience with bear and hunting big game is far greater than mine. I'm from the Midwest, and I've never heard or seen anything like this around where I hunt. I'm forever haunted by what occurred on that day, but I have learned to live with it. A day doesn't go by that I don't think about it, and I feel extremely lucky to have witnessed my sighting. I've seen people on TV who say we need to kill a Bigfoot. These people are idiots. If Bigfoot proves to exist, it would be one of the greatest scientific finds of this century and the last. Yet people would shoot one? We should listen to the Native Americans and show Bigfoot respect. Thank you, Steve. I do wish to remain anonymous. Holy, that is one hell of an experience. That is a lot to watch and take in. If Bigfoot proves to exist, it would be one of the greatest scientific finds of this century. It turns out that Bigfoot, Sasquatch, is one of the largest hidden facts by the scientific community. And that is a fact. The scientific community is doing everything they can to deny this truth and many other ones. It's easy to see. It's plain as frickin' clear water. It's unfortunate. What are my thoughts on your experience? Well, you know what you saw. 100% you know what you saw. Not too many people would not be absolutely alarmed from seeing that, especially the movements. How many people have described the movements, the impossible movements? You know, they're crouched down, fanned out, and scooting along flat to the ground like nothing, and incredibly fast. And that speed is what has scared the shit out of many, many people, right? It's the speed that freaks people out. They just can't believe that something that big can move like that. How many times have you heard those words? And for you to go back after seeing what you saw, you're a brave man. You got a set on you, I'll tell you what. And obviously it wasn't a bear, not a chance. You know what you saw. What's surprising to me is those things didn't just run out there and grab an elk. They obviously move a lot faster than an elk. I wonder what was going on there. I wonder what size or what age the other two were. If it was just lessons day or have fun day, who knows? Who knows what was going on? I don't know. But I knew one thing for certain. As a rule, grizzlies and elk, I've shared this with you guys before, but grizzlies and elk go hand in hand, right? Where there's grizzlies, there's elk. Where there's elk, there's grizzlies. Where there's grizzlies. But more and more and more times we're hearing about these beings being associated with elk. And numerous times in Alberta, I've talked to a handful of people who had their elk stolen from them, from a large, hairy, man-like thing running from their camp with a hole. One group of hunters saw the whole bull elk get pulled off the hanging pole, and the thing had its hand around its muzzle, head over, cocked over its shoulder, over its back, full-grown bull elk, ran with it like nothing. Imagine seeing that and previously not accepting these facts as real and seeing that go down. Imagine trying to deal with that one. But anyway, thanks again for sending that in, man. Appreciate it. And good for you to not quitting. It's still going out, right? It's very important. Okay, one more and I'm out of here. Titled, I Think I Saw One. Hi, Steve. My name's Mike. I think I saw one of these things. My buddy and I went up Forest Hill Road. Yes, that's how they spell it. One word. We went out for a day of getting away and doing some target practice, a beer or two, and leave the Sierra Mountains, and love the Sierra Mountains. We headed up north side of French Meadows Reservoir and decided to take the Soda Springs Road back to I-80 freeway back home. That road seemed to last for hours. We were kind of tired and should have went back the way we came. I was riding shotgun and staring out the window at everything when there was a clearing around a bend. I saw this frickin' man leaning around a tree, staring right at us, about 50 to 75 yards away. I locked eyes with it, and I turned to my buddy and had that butterfly feeling, and he said, "Dude, I just effing saw something, turn around." He's like, "Really?" He was tired of driving and didn't want to turn around, so we kept driving. He trusted me that I see something. I have an eye for finding things on roads like knives, cameras, and tools, and seeing wildlife. We drove for 10 minutes or so, and I wanted to turn back. He saw that I was having an issue with what I'd seen and asked me, "Do you really want to turn around?" I knew he was tired of driving that road, so I said, "It's okay, let's go home." But it's locked in my head, and I'm damn sure what I had seen. Description: it was like a damn Sasquatch thing peering around a tree. I saw the left arm on the tree and the left leg on the ground, a head with a face, and looked at its eyes. How tall, I'm not sure. Years later, I decided to ask a couple hunters at work if they had ever experienced any weird shit, mostly because of your channel. One guy said yes, he was hunting deer pretty close to that area at 17 years old. His dad was a badass military guy and let him walk ahead on the trail. Next thing you know, Dad came running up and said, "Son, something was flanking you all the way." They stopped and heard something crash through the trees up ahead of them. Keep it up, Steve. Whew. All right, man. Thanks for that share, Mike. You know what you saw. You know what you saw. And you know, another thing I always tell people, especially when I'm guiding big game too, is what I have found for me, your initial thought. When you see something, your initial thought of what you're seeing, that first quarter second, for me is always 100% bang on. It's after that initial sight that you start to question what you saw and you're not sure and you wonder if maybe you're seeing things. Usually for me, it's like if I'm counting rings on it. If I'm counting rings as an example on a mountain sheep and stone sheep, and I'm counting rings to try to age it, and it's tough. But if I'm trying to count that 6 point on an elk, and I thought I seen 6 points. Usually, and of course I make sure before anybody drops a hammer. But what I'm saying is, when my initial thought is I seen 6 points, I was always correct in my first initial quarter second of a sighting. Or if I thought I counted 8 rings on a bighorn sheep's horn, right away, and I think I counted 8. I counted 8, but I will always keep looking to be absolutely sure. But what I'm saying, that's just my examples of when you see something, your initial thought is usually basically almost always correct, unless of course you prove yourself wrong after observing what you're looking at. But anyway, that should be good for now. I don't know what the audio is going to be like in here, but I'm going to post this video no matter what, because I obviously haven't had too much time to do it lately. But the experiences are stacking up, and there's knowledge to be cut loose and shared, right? We got to get all the knowledge out, and we're going to do it. So be safe out there. Keep sharing your experiences through me with the people. And hopefully, eventually, I'm going to do a time lapse on how I'm going to transform this big shop. And it's going to be something else by the time I'm done. I'll tell you what. And then we're going to really kick it into high gear, straighten out a bunch of shit, bringing everybody together, the people, taking the power away from the pricks, and making life more enjoyable for many.